I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Actually, keep it open in case John can go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at least for a little bit.
Welcome, everybody, for renewal agreement committee meeting for, what's today's date? January 8th, 2024. We have a gentleman from Mars on Zoom.
Public comment first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we'll do public comment first. Anybody? Anybody? Maybe we should probably get going, right? We
Yeah,
can always
I
take it
think
later
you're
if we want.
absolutely
Yeah,
correct.
all right. So as I was saying, we have a gentleman from Mars on Zoom with us. Matt?
Mac Reed and Steve Hemmon
Yep.
from the Mass Association of Regional Schools. We sent them our questions. I sent it to you in your packet today. I'm going to try to put it on the screen as well. But they answered our questions to the best of their ability, and feel free to ask them as much as you want. They've been consulting with us for years. They worked on that 2018 agreement and have been with me for the past 6 years, working on different things for the regional school system. So they're both outstanding guys and very easy to talk to. So I don't know if you just want to start, Chris, with question one. You can actually have my copy
Sure.
here.
All right. Oh, that's what you gave us in the...
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got it. Where is it? There you go. So the first question, question one. There was a question on the lease of the elementary and middle schools on page 3. The agreement states, quote, "Each lease shall be for a term of not more than 20 years," end quote. The Wood Middle School is requesting a 50-year lease. Do you want me to read the response, or do you want...
No, guys, why don't you lead into that? Because that was a question we had when we were going through MSBA, and Justin and Kathy and Chris are part of the building committee. MSBA was requesting a 50-year lease, and then when we looked at our regional agreement, it said no more than 20. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that, and we want to make sure we do it the correct way.
It appears that maybe there isn't a real correct way. As far as the Department of Education is concerned, as you see in the memo that you have before you, 20 years is the maximum that you're supposed to put in your regional agreement. So our suggestion is that you may want your attorney or get something in writing from MSBA that says that you need a 50-year agreement, a lease agreement. However, I still think you can still put the 20 years in your regional agreement. If you have to do something separate for the MSBA, you can do that as a side issue.
Okay, anybody have questions on
I
that?
think
Yeah, I
he's
just
talking-
say...
He's trying
What's
to
that?
say, he was muted.
Oh,
Steve was
go ahead,
muted.
Steve.
I just got on review. I would add that the 20-year lease is renewable. The reason they say 20 years is because the lease can't be in perpetuity. It has to have some point if you stop and then you renew it. So it can be there. The MSBA, though, they want their buildings to last 50 years. And I'm not sure about the lease, that the lease has to be. And as Max said, if they say 50 years, ask MSBA for the law under MSBA that says you can rent it for 50 years. If they do, then you just quote that in your agreement that it'll be 50-year lease per the laws of MSBA.
Yes, you could do it just specifically for just your middle school, if that's what you're doing, and just have that as a one-time issue for a lease and lease the 20-year maximum and for everything else.
You would say it would be 20-year lease, which is renewable. So it doesn't mean that it ends, it's renewable. That they just say they don't want it perpetuity.
Anyone have any questions on that? I know that was a hot topic, before with us, so. Does that make sense? I mean, especially for the folks from Whitman on that.
Yes.
I mean, okay.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
We'll move on to next question. Next question was on... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm just thinking out loud, I hadn't thought of this before. I don't know what Steve would think of this, but you might have a addendum to your agreement even saying that this specifically for the MSBA and for your new middle school, that you would have a 50-year lease. And so that would go away after that school is built.
I got a quick question though regarding that. If we do this for this building in the agreement, the next time we build a building,
Yeah, we want to amend the agreement.
we'll have to amend the agreement. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yes, if you put a new building on, you're gonna have to list it or whatever, in your, however you list the buildings
Okay.
in your agreement,
Gotcha.
yes.
All right,
It would be more of a formality than anything else.
okay. So when you say formality, does that mean we have to get it voted at town meeting and all that, or does it mean we just go?
Yes,
Yeah, you would.
yeah, you
Okay.
would.
All right,
But you're not doing any substantive change, you're just listing what are your schools and so forth
right.
in the agreement.
Do we know what the lease is on the high school?
Shouldn't be,
I was just gonna say the same thing. I think, I'm not sure if this is where you're going or not on this, but shouldn't we be being consistent with what the lease periods and what we're saying in the agreement? I mean, I don't think it should be hodgepodge depending upon the building. Like, what did we do with the high school? What did we do with Hanson Middle? Those were both built with,
With an
MSBA.
right, at the time,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
same idea.
Yeah, I think MSBA is, their requirements are getting us bogged down here. And we're kind of limited probably with what we can do with MSBA because they have such stringent requirements for their reimbursements. So I don't know that we can avoid it. I mean, we could ask, the building committee to reach out to MSBA and see if there's any way around it. But if not, we might have to just stipulate that it's for specifically this building project and might have to do it again next time, right? That's,
Did they require that on your previous MSBA projects, or is this the first time you've heard of the 50 years?
I don't
First
remember
time
us.
that I'm aware of.
I mean, we weren't here
Yeah.
when they were built, so I don't know.
One of us was.
Steve was.
I believe when the high school was built, the high school is not leased. I think the high school is owned by the district.
Mhm.
So there was no lease on the high school. Everything was done through the high school and then split off to the two towns. So this was not built. As far as the middle school is concerned, I don't think there was an MSB requirement on that, and that was paid off rather quickly as well.
Yeah,
Well,
so
this
this is
predates
new
the
then.
current MSBA, which I think took over from the SBA in 2007, so the rules
Yeah.
have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our hands are kind of tied.
Both of those schools were built well before that.
Yeah.
So basically what you do is the others, you had middle school and elementaries in the two towns that are owned by the towns, and you'd have a lease agreement which is required by DESC, that you have control over the daily use of that building inside what's happening educationally. And those would maybe have to be the 20-year lease, and if the MSBA requires you to have the 50, well, you set up the 50-year lease as long as that's gonna last. You need to satisfy MSBA, they're the ones with the money.
Yes.
Right.
But we know that DESE will not approve your regional agreement if you put that there'll be 50-year leases in all your schools.
What about if what your suggestion was if we are able to get documentation from MSBA, like do MSBA and DESE, do they communicate to each other or are they separate
They're
from each
separate
other?
organizations.
No, I know they're
MSBA
separate organizations, but I guess my confusion is if DESE says you can't have anything more than a 20-year lease, but MSBA is saying you need a 50-year lease. If we have language written from MSBA in our regional agreement, would that suffice it, or do you not know because you're not the commissioner?
I would think so, because MSBA has their own set of laws that how they operate.
Yeah.
How they operate, the whole set of laws at MSBA. And if they say 50, you put it in the agreement that required 50-year lease, and that's what you have. I'm really questioning this 50-year lease. I'm dealing with two other projects, and they want the buildings to last 50 years. I have not heard about dealing with 50-year leases. I mean, they just want, they build them, they want them to last 50 years. So
Okay.
I think, I don't know, Jeff, you could call.
Yeah.
somebody from the
Yeah, I'll
building
call
committee,
Steve.
MSBA and verify this.
Because the lease thing was, I spent about 3 hours on the phone with them and their attorneys during November of 2021 about the lease and the lease agreement, so I'll clarify, because they were really specifically looking for something And they want it to last 50 years too, but they wanted language as far as a lease. So I will definitely look into it.
How long will it
Yeah,
be
but you
before
also,
the
but you
school
might
is paid
also
off?
want to
Hold
tell
on.
them about the law that says it only can be 20 years.
Correct,
on the
right,
lease.
right.
Right.
Again, left hand not knowing what the right hand's
So
doing, so.
that doesn't really make sense.
Say it again, Laura?
I said, if the school is gonna be paid off in 30 years, how are they requiring a lease longer than the payoff
The
period?
useful life of the building.
Yeah.
Was what they wanted.
No, I
for-
understand,
Yeah,
but I mean, that's, like, after it's built and paid off and you know, it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
So can you put some sort of language in there similar to like an employment contract that says that every year that it goes through, it'll be renewable for an additional year until the 50 years are up? Still a 20-year lease, but every year that it goes through is renewable for the next year. So it always will remain a 20-year lease until it gets
That
to
makes
the
sense.
30th year, and then you start the countdown.
I don't really want to revisit the nightmare of that lease
It
agreement.
was
No.
ugly.
It's almost like an employment
Yeah.
contract, that you have a renewable.
So Jeff, your question to MSBA will be, is there any way around it?
Well, I wanna see what the leak, you know, this is what we're being told by Desi.
Right,
20 years for our, because we're looking at this, and you're asking for this. So where do we lie, and how do, let your legal come up with the language for it.
okay. Alrighty,
Thanks, gentlemen.
sounds good. All right, moving on to question 2. On page 5, to clarify the language, if the committee votes to increase the district budget after the assessments have been appropriated by the member towns, the committee will following 603 CMR 41.05, section 5. So, should I continue reading this, Jeff?
In,
Or do they?
more recent, I'm sorry.
Mac, you and Steve, can you take over that?
Yes. So what we're seeing in more recent regional agreements is just what is in yours, what we recommended to be in yours, is just citing the this 603 CMR, and assuming that the administration and the school committee will know how to handle that. I put in your memo the actual language from that section 5. It's kind of complicated there. You can summarize that if you'd like. But, so there are actually 3 different things you can do. One is what's in there now, saying, just citing that CMR. 2 is you could put the whole thing in there. And 3, some of them just have a little summary, a paragraph of what that means. But you have to follow those, the 6 items in that, in their CMR. So I don't know, Steve, would you like to just summarize that?
A lot of times we like to quote the law in the agreement. Then if the law changes, you don't have to go back and change your agreement, for number 1. Number 2 is, we're working with another district, Tim Mary and I work with another district, and they suggested putting the statement in saying, if the agreement and it says one thing and the law says another, the law is the one that takes precedent. So in other words, it's a hierarchy. You have your agreement, you have regulations and laws, state, and then you have federal, so forth. But if the law says one thing and the agreement says another, you go by what the law says. So if this got changed for some reason, then that will tell it. Again, what happens is after your budget's done, there's 2 parts to this. If you wound up that you were short on income, okay, that the income, you anticipated X number of dollars coming in, and it came in less. Well, you could then take, the school committee then could take E&D or other sources and bring that into the income side, and they don't have to get any approval from the member towns. If they do increase the budget, but at the same time that they have the income to cover it, they still have to go to the towns and notify them that they're increasing the budget, and that's what it outlines, that the towns have a right to see what you've done. Most cases, if you're not asking for any money, then they'll probably say, the selectman can say, fine, go ahead, after 45 days, you don't want to go to town meeting. However, if you're asking for money, then they're gonna go to town meeting. So that's the case, that's the summary of that. If you're asking for money, you have to go to town meeting to get that, because the town meetings have to appropriate that money to the region.
Well, specifically, the law says if you're increasing the assessment of either or both of your towns, then it has to go to the selectmen and go to the towns.
Most likely, if you're increasing your budget and you don't have the income to do it, then you're asking them for more money. So you have to take a look at what you're doing. But even if you had the money to cover that increase, you still have to send it to the towns and notify them. And they do have a right to say no, but most of the times do not, as long as the income. It's the fact that you're asking them for more money. And you don't have the money and your income side to cover that.
Okay, everybody good with that one? Oh, Laura?
Yeah, I'm good with it, but I think, I don't have I totally agree with referencing the section of the law, just in case there's any kind of updates and, we unwittingly don't update the agreement. But I do think it's important that it be outlined somewhere. I don't think just a reference to this, 603 CMR. I think we should outline essentially what's here and then say, something that references provided that this is in compliance with 603, whatever the chapter or verse is.
You can mirror the language
If
above.
I could suggest something, what you can do is you could copy the law right out and have it as an addendum to your agreement, a reference addendum to your agreement. Just so they don't have to go look for it. You have your agreement signed off by everybody, then you can attach it as an addendum.
And that's the language that you guys have outlined here?
Yeah, that's the language
Yep.
right from the.
Yeah, it's pretty,
right
I think that would be useful, it's very clear, I think. Yeah,
The other thing is, some districts we're seeing, if there are other citations in there saying the law or the regulation, everybody realizes regulations have the power of law. That you could copy those and add them as an information to the agreement, so they don't have to go look for it. But then they also might want to check it to see if the law has ever changed. So, but again, that would be, at least they know what they're dealing with, but they don't have to go looking for it.
That's a good idea. All right, moving on.
Well, so that's what your committee has to decide, whether there could be a short paragraph, a general statement referencing this, or it could be put at the end. So your committee really will need to decide what you want to do with this.
When you put it at the end like that, it's not part of the agreement, it's a reference document, so they don't have to go looking for it. And again, once you put it in the agreement, then if the law changed, now you gotta back and forth. You say one thing, the law says another, then you back and forth, so it's much easier than if the law changes, you cite the law, then you don't have to go changing your agreement.
well, I think, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I think we could strike a happy medium and we could recite what the current law is, but then state the intention to comply with whatever the then current regulations are for that particular in this particular case, I'm not saying across the board, but for the amendment to approve budgets, just so it's abundantly clear and spelled out, I absolutely do not think this should be an appendix. I don't think it should be like an after. It really needs to be, everybody understands what it is, and it needs to be spelled out. That's just my opinion.
Well, I could respond, you could put a statement saying chapter, CMR 4105 needs to be followed, and it provides, you can say provides the process, and a copy of the law, it will be as attached to the agreement as a reference.
How,
They know that they're gonna go there. Most superintendents, business managers know that they have to deal with that, because they use their regulations in other areas besides the financial.
Hillary?
how often do the regulations change, right? Because if we put it in right like this, do they change every 3 years? Could they change every 5 years? Does it not, no rhyme or reason?
It depends what regulations, this regulation hasn't changed for years, but you could put in if you felt more comfortable. But again, you could put another statement saying, the regulation as to this date, and if it changes, then we have to go by with that regulation.
Right.
It's the new regulation. There's all different ways to do what you want.
Another thing that we put in a lot of agreements, anytime we've cited something specific, a law or regulation, just add as amended.
As may be amended, yep.
That will cover you if it gets amended. you wouldn't have to change your regional agreement, because you noted that it may have changed.
Oh, good.
So whatever makes you comfortable that, you know, picture, you people know what it is now, but in 10, 15 years, new people come in that have no idea. You wanna make it as clear as they can for them to how they're gonna operate.
Got it. Thank you.
Question number 3 was the big one.
Okay, question number 3. For this section, the committee would like each area defined and for Maz to clarify and clear up the language. It is somewhat confusing. Can there be separate formulas for each category? And it says, all operating, capital, debt, and transportation costs will be apportioned by using the enrollment formula. Each equals each member town's share for each fiscal year shall be determined by computing the ratio which that town's pupil enrollment in the district on October 1st of the year in which the apportionment is determined bears to the total pupil enrollment for all the member towns in the district on the same date. All right.
Okay, man, you can tell them.
This is,
That's a problem.
turned out to be a confusing issue. As noted here, your committee came up with the notion of an enrollment formula, which we kind of liked, but only if you were to use it for at least 3 of the 4 categories that will create a formula. But since that has created confusion in your minds, just think about other people who aren't studying it like you are. So our advice here now is to not use that term and to put a specific formula, as you've noted, in each of the 4 places that needs a formula. And now, the other thing, the bottom line is, you can have 4 different formulas, you can have 1 formula, you can have a combination of those formulas, you can make up your own formula. So, there's no one answer, but you see in that memo that we have some recommendations. In terms of the operating costs, we like the use of foundation enrollment because that includes all of the students for which the district is responsible. So whether they are school choice or charter out or special education out or wherever they are, if you're paying for them, the foundation enrollment covers them. And so that seems to be a very fair way of dealing with the operating costs, what gets given to you, to the towns, the money that's above the minimum, how that gets allocated would include all of your students. So then, for capital costs, we kind of like the idea of saying how many students are actually in the seats in your school, because those are the students who are benefiting from the capital costs that, capital projects that you're doing. And the same with debt. Those students in the classroom are the ones who are benefiting from the capital costs that are paid for by your debt.
Mac, on the debt, there's 2 different ways of doing it, remember?
Yes, so we put in there are two different ways. One is, some regional districts say, whatever the split of population between your communities, and you're basically, I think, still 60-40. If you come up with a debt that's gonna be for 20 years, or for the next 20 years, whatever that split is on that day when you incur the debt, that stays the same for 20 years. Other districts say it gets recalculated every year. So if one of your towns were to grow a lot and the other one not, would it be fair for that town that's really grown a lot and has a lot more children in the district? Now it's now 65-35 instead of 60-40. Is it still fair for 20 years for that town to only be paying 60% of the debt? So some towns say, we'll figure that every year based on the current population. That's how you will be paying for the debt. And transportation, we see there are a couple of options here. One is to just go by the percentage of students in the seats, like your 60-40 split, or actually do a head count of the students who are eligible to be transported count them and use those numbers to decide what each town is to pay. So those are our recommendations for those 4 areas, but that's up to you to do. You can use whatever formula you want on each of those categories.
If I could come in, what you have to do is you have, each of these categories, you have to choose a date consistent from year to year that you're going to calculate that, from year to year, and then how you're gonna do it, you have to clearly define it. And so that's what it would be. So if you decided that you wanted to do, on students riding transportation, choose an October 1, usually October 1 dates are usually the consistency, because that's when you have to report to the Department of Education. How many kids are riding, you come up with that percentage. And you see how many are actually riding, or how many are eligible to ride, you do it that way. Again, you figure that out. Again, you can define it. The other thing is, if I could share a screen with you, Jeff, can I share a screen?
Yeah, I'll get you access.
One of the things is foundation enrollment. That's the other thing, calculating foundation enrollment. As Max said, it's kids that are in the district, school choice out, charter out, collaborative special education out, or out of district, usually they're special ed in a facility that they're living full time out.
Steve, you
So
can
again,
share your screen.
Is it okay?
Yep, should be.
Yeah, let me get to it here, hold on. Everyone's different here to find where the sharing is.
All he's getting at, I guess we sort of have to apologize. There's not a right or wrong answer to all these questions you have. That's why you have the questions. We're trying to give you what the rules are and what latitude you have to make your own decisions. But you've asked some good questions that don't have black and white answers.
Okay, this is a fun, can you guys see that?
Yes,
Can you blow it up?
yeah, exactly.
Can you expand it, Steve?
What?
Could you expand it?
Make it a little bit bigger.
How's that?
Too
Yeah.
big, too big.
Maybe drag the corners a little bit.
Yeah.
Good.
We're getting there.
All right.
That's good.
good. Yeah.
All right, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
good.
Thank you.
Steve.
Alright, so what you calculate is, in foundation enrollment, as Max said, is kids in the district, school choice out, charter out, collaborative out, are out of district, it's usually special ed in a residential placement. So you would take your district in district, how many are from Whitman, how many are from Hanson that are actually in the building. Then you take school choice out, and you can find out how many are from Whitman out, choose choice out, and how many are from Hanson. You can get that from the Department of Education. They will have that as part of the calculation, the October 1. Charter out, the same thing. Now, as far as collaborative and our district sped department should know how many students are out from each of those, and then you can compare these numbers to what you get from the Department of Education. They tell you what your foundation enrollment is. That's dividing that up. And then those numbers are then put here, Whitman, Hanson, and then you calculate the percentages, okay? So that's a way of doing that. We have one of the districts that's doing that now. We set that one up. So again, it tells you who's paying for what in each district, from each town. So, or you can just do a straight formula, you have to take the reports and how many, which the split is. And not care which particular category. So it's up to however you want to do that, using the foundation enrollment.
And what you have, excuse me, Steve, what you have in your current regional agreement is all the students in the district and then all the students out of district. So that's, you're using those 2 columns and not the other 3 columns. That's what you're doing right now. But you can use any combination of those lines for the formula that you use.
Most regions we'll work with, if they say foundation enrollment, and we break it out so they exactly know how many they have and where they are. These are just head counts, no names, nothing else gets affiliated with them. It's just a strict head count. Again, that's however you want to do that. It gives you options to do that.
No, we're not.
Okay? I'm going to stop sharing.
That makes sense.
Yep. Steve, quick question, George just brought this up, it doesn't include homeschool, correct?
Right, homeschool, no, they're not, homeschool are not enrolled in your school district.
Yeah.
They're not enrolled. This is only kids that are enrolled
Got it.
those 4 different ways, 5 different ways.
Okay.
Because you're paying for them, remember now, school choice, you're
Yep.
gonna pay most likely 5,000. Charter, what do you want to check, about 12 or 13,000?
Yes,
And then collaborative is based on, if they're in a collaborative and you're paying for that, and a special ed, not a district or special ed as well.
correct.
Those, that's the expensive ones.
Transportation.
But that's how it is, that's what makes a foundation enrollment, what you're paying for, what students you're paying for.
Okay.
So you can come up with, when you want to, the calculations on your assessment sheet, you can say the amount above, if you're gonna use the foundation enrollment percentage. On, say, transportation, you're gonna use how many kids are in your buildings, between the two, in the district, are enrolled in your school. You then could take the debt, you could take again how many in the buildings, or whatever you want. And debt, you could then either do a rolling average, or you could a set number, change it every year. In capital, usually capital is like if you're buying something, it's gonna cost you over a 4 or 5 year period, as opposed to long-term debt. You can again set that up, but you just need to define what enrollment you're gonna use and the time of the year. Chris Lynch, who reviews these things, will always ask you, if you just say enrollment, student enrollment, they'll say, what enrollment are you talking about?
So, if you can scroll up on your eyes, I guess, to where it's highlighted in yellow, it was read earlier. If you decide, for example, that, under operating, you're gonna use the foundation enrollment, it would still basically have this paragraph, but it would say, all operating costs will be apportioned by using the foundation enrollment. And then the rest of that would, remain.
But you'd also be defining the other enrollment numbers you're gonna use.
Right, so that's, and if, once you decide what formula you would like to use for each of those 4 categories, we'd certainly be happy to help you with the specific language to make sure it will work in your agreement.
Is that something we will
I think
discuss later?
I think that's something we,
Yeah.
I mean, thanks for those options and clarifying that. I think the foundation piece versus actual enrollment, students in district, helps us out, especially around, operating costs and then transportation costs. So,
Capital debt too.
Capital
Makes sense,
debt,
yeah.
yeah.
Building.
Right.
so just,
Some districts put capital and debt together, other districts separate them out, depending how they want them defined. But again, they are 2 different things. Debt is long-term debt, capital is a short-term debt. Like you had to buy a $400,000 truck or something like that, and you want to spread it over 4 or 5 years, and that's a capital expense. And then you borrow the money for 4 or 5 years, and then however assessment you're gonna use, that's paid off. That's just an example.
do we have any debt outside of just individual towns? No. So we don't have that yet.
What was it, I'm sorry.
I
what
said,
was it?
so right now, we don't have any regional debt outside of just specific to the towns.
That's what I was gonna ask, I was gonna ask, I assume other than the high school, it's the rest of the apportionment of debts and capital is per town,
Right, but.
at the town level.
It is, but when we talked about debt a little bit, so Steve said that, wanted to buy a truck, $300,000 truck for the district, it would be a debt, not necessarily capital item per town, it would be a district piece.
Yep.
We've gone to the towns right now for that capital, and it's just been split through the enrollment 60-40, but that might be something we wanna look at a little differently.
Okay.
But we have no debt right now, outside of just to the towns.
Alrighty?
The reason you separate it between capital and debt is then you can use different types of assessment methods if you want.
Yeah.
But it also gives you if you do it on a capital, you borrow the money through a bank, you don't need to go through a major borrowing, long-term debt, floating bonds and everything else. It gets more extensive when you do that. The other thing is it was said that the high high school is owned by the region, my understanding, and then the middle school and elementary are owned by the towns, am I correct?
Right.
Yeah, that's why you need to have leases for them. And then when if they do anything, let's say the town is gonna build, I guess you're looking for a new, or do a new, middle school someplace where you're gonna do that, the debt is on the town, not on the region. However, MSBA will recognize the region as the educational agency in working with the towns to do that. But they only recognize the region, but however, the town is gonna have, and they wanna own it, they can float the bonds and everything.
All right. Question 4, I think you guys are correct. I think it has been addressed above. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, we're hoping you've expunged the notion of an enrollment formula from your minds and just think about assessment formulas.
What's that again? I'm sorry? I didn't hear that.
Matt, can you just
Could you repeat that?
We're hoping that you don't utilize the term enrollment
All right,
formula.
I did hear you say that earlier,
There is, obviously, there could be such a thing, but the assessment formula is really whatever you decide that you're gonna use, the foundation enrollment or whatever. So technically, there is an enrollment formula that goes into each assessment formula. I think, we just think that the enrollment formula concept is confusing to everyone.
Thank you. And I did miss one. We have the question 5 reads, does the agreement go into effect once it is voted by the town or when it is officially signed by the commission?
When signed by the commissioner.
All right. Thank you. Does anybody else?
Usually sometimes if you can do it, you try to sign by the commission effective July 1 of the new year, something of that nature, usually to be consistent, not in the middle of the year.
Well, as Jeff knows too, when your regional agreement was done several years ago, before it went to the towns, it went to the Department of Education, and they reviewed it, and their attorneys reviewed it, and they determined that it was appropriate and legal. And then it went to your towns, and that's what will happen again. So once their attorneys have approved it and sent it to your towns, if your towns approve it, there will be no question about the commissioner signing it.
We'll go back to, the form, it goes back to the commissioner with a statement from each town clerk that the town meeting on such and such a date, and it was voted to approve it. So all the backup documents go to the Department of Education, and we recommend send 7 or 8 to get them signed, so each town has an original copy. You have signatures you put on it, and then once he signs it and sends it back to you, then it is in effect. But you could choose the date if you want a different date, but sometimes if you're consistent with the fiscal year, it's less confusing.
But it does require that final signature.
Correct, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Anybody got a question?
So the question is, are you more confused now than you were?
No, we're good.
No.
No, I think that was good, Mac. I think, Steve, thank you. It was good clarifying, especially the assessment areas. That can help us out quite a bit.
If you need us to help you some of the wording we have experience with, please don't hesitate to reach out.
I'm sure we'll be talking. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Hi, everybody.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Okay, so what's now? What do you want to?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. We wanna just quickly maybe go through these and have a discussion about them individually?
These being what, I have some paper in front of me.
I'm sorry, the questions that were just proposed in the different scenarios. Do we wanna get into the nitty gritty of these, or do we wanna, what's your flavor?
Well, I think we need more advice from somebody, MSBA, on the lease.
Right.
Yeah,
We're not
I
gonna
will
solve
take
that.
care of that this week, or tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm on actually a Zoom call with Mars tomorrow. They're doing a workshop on different things, and I'm gonna bring that up as far as a conflict.
Okay.
So the assessment, question. Oh, no, that's, next one was the lease, right? You got that one.
We got the lease.
Yeah. So 3 was, yeah. 3 was the assessment.
Well, do we want to just talk about that, the language for the amendments, because we could put that in, that, about the approved budgets?
Oh, okay,
So-
specifically about that, I thought we,
Clear that one up and just get an approval here, and we, John and I can play around with that language so that we can start putting this together.
I agree with Laura that the more that we include there, it's
Yep.
probably
So the whole
better.
thing.
Yeah,
Right.
we're gonna have to
Yeah.
review this every 3 years
Yeah.
for what we've written in the agreement anyway.
So basically what's here,
Yeah.
everything, just spell it out.
Why not?
And just
Maybe.
tack on the as may be amended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
in there.
How did this one come up? I don't remember why we had this question.
Question 2?
Yeah.
I don't either, but
question,
Was it because we weren't sure if we could increase the assessment? Was that the question?
I believe so.
yeah, that was just the basic,
Right? It was
Yeah.
like a pretty basic, because
Yeah.
we always have that question every year,
Right.
I feel
But if
like.
I'm, right, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Laura, what you wanted was in the, before we get to the specific language of the law, you're saying this is a paragraph that says, please refer to, should be a little bit more explanatory for people reading it, correct?
yeah, I'm kind of saying like wherever we're talking about this, that the language they've got in here, which is, they said, the language from the law,
Law, right.
Yeah.
that we should include that, but then, you know, caveat, as may be amended from time to time, you know, da-da-da. So we're referring back to the law, so we're in compliance, just in the event that in between the 3-year review,
Right.
something jumps the track. But that everybody has a clear understanding, and I just think that if we put it in an amendment and, you know, we all get hit by a Mack
Yeah.
truck and we, you know, and we have collective amnesia or whatever,
Right.
then we don't have to worry about whether people who come after us are gonna understand what the intention was.
And are you thinking then it would be something to the effect of the regional agreement is, or federal statute, state regulation, and the regional agreement in that order are the ones that determine the course of action, something like that, so people can understand it clearly?
I wasn't even gonna go there, I was
Okay.
just gonna say, 603 you know, in compliance with 603 CMR 41055, as may be amended from time to time. And then I would assume that as we go through that, you know, review every
Yeah.
3 years, one of the things we're gonna do is a refresher, like, has something drastic changed? And if something drastic changed in between times, I would think we'd be responsible, we wouldn't wait for the 3-year review.
That makes sense.
That works.
yep.
Yeah.
That works for
Yeah.
perfect.
All right. Yeah, so moving on to number 3. Yeah. Anyone have any thoughts on how we'd like to approach this?
I guess there's the easy way, and it's, you know, we use one formula.
Mm-hmm.
For enrollment formula, you come up with it, and it's operating, capital, debt, transportation uses one formula, or we can try and nitpick between, you know, operating is foundation enrollment, capital is who's in the buildings, debt's who's in the buildings, and transportation's butts in the seats.
Yeah, I guess-
Whatever,
Me not knowing, would there be any advantage to using the individual formulas for the district is my question. And I don't know, I wouldn't know unless someone smarter than me took a look at it and figured it out. you know.
probably move hundreds to thousands of dollars in any direction for any of those, but I don't know that it's significant, but it means that calculating the budget takes a spreadsheet rather than, well, each individual assessment's totaled up at the end anyway.
And is there any, like I said, any advantage to doing that or disadvantage? I wouldn't know, I don't.
I think depending on how you play it out, how you use which formula for which thing, whether it's capital, whether it's debt, or whether it's transportation, may impact the amount of money that one town either receives
Right.
or pays,
Yeah.
depending on which piece you choose,
Mm-hmm.
which assessment formula you choose.
Right.
So like Whitman pays for crossing guards, we probably have less kids taking the bus as a result. So that could shift the transportation cost if we break it down that way.
I'd like to weigh in on the transportation, because I've been itching to for 2 years.
Yep.
The way that the current agreement has transportation spelled out, it has 2 methods of assessing the transportation, and one is for the eligible or mandated, which is split by the enrollment, 60-40. And then the non-eligible, non-mandated busing is paid by the member town whose kids are riding on the bus. And it's sort of, to me, it's a convoluted way of stating it. So I think that, and it does involve money, it involves significant money, because although Whitman has the larger population with a smaller geographic town, Hanson actually has more children and more miles being bused because you have fewer buildings and you're a bigger town. So the 60-40 disadvantages Whitman if we're going to get into who's paying what for whom. And so we pay 60% of the mandated cost, so we have 43% of the kids, or 43% of the miles, whichever way you want to look at it. And then we pay the dollar figure for our kids who live within 1.5 miles of the
Right,
school,
you're
which
paying
is a lot more kids because most of your kids live 1.5 miles away from the school, so they get bused and they're covered by the mandated. So I think if we're going to have to clean up the transportation language and just have one way of assessing it.
So what would you, so based on that, would it make sense to do the foundation enrollment, like how it says here, like the kids in the seats?
I absolutely, yes,
Right?
yes,
And don't you think that would be most fair for both towns?
I think so.
I would
But
need to see the numbers.
but it's-
I
it's-
understand what you're saying, I hear what you're saying. I also, we're in a year where we're looking at an override. And we're just a couple years after going to statutory, so I'm not embarrassed to say this will go over like a lead balloon in our town.
Yep.
So if that's included in the agreement, I would expect that the agreement probably won't pass at town meeting.
Yep.
Particularly if we do it this year and the year that we've got the override.
And I'll be very upfront with you, Laura, it depends on the reimbursement rate.
Right.
The higher the reimbursement rate, the better off Hanson is.
Hanson's gonna do.
And the lower the reimbursement rate, the worse off Hanson is. It doesn't really affect Whitman so much as Hanson. If the reimbursement rate is 90%, then almost all of your transportation is covered.
So,
With the
I'm,
current
is there, I guess is there a way for us to run hypothetical,
Could you use last
past
number?
numbers, or?
Yes.
We can run the numbers,
Yeah.
we can
I'll give you
absolutely,
this.
I mean,
Okay.
It's a lot of numbers now.
Kathy's been waiting for this for 2 years.
But I
Hasn't
think-
the reimbursement gone?
Well, this is,
It
this is.
has.
And it does, Laura, honestly involve,
we're
given
looking
the
at
current budget, it would involve about a $30,000 shift from Whitman to Hanson. Because we're paying more for the mandated.
For
We're paying
25?
60% and we only have 43% of the kids. So that's a 17% shift.
I hear what you're saying, but
That was
I
as
think
low as
part of
65.
an agreement, part of the negotiation is, why would we do that? Well, I'm just being completely blunt, like, why would Hanson agree to even amend this agreement if we know right out of the gate we're eating $30,000 as a result of it?
And I'm being honest with you, that's what it's gonna cost to get this agreement reworded. So-
But I don't know that Hanson is particularly bullish about amending the agreement. I don't think that nobody from Hanson is saying to me, why aren't we amending the agreement? My board is like, why are we amending this agreement? Who started this? I'm like, well, I'm just trying to represent, like, we were asked to participate in it. So I hear what you're saying,
Yep.
and I think I would like to take this back.
Yep.
I'll present the numbers. I'd also like to maybe get some information about historically, what has the reimbursement rate been?
Yeah.
So that we can try, I know the past isn't necessarily an indicator of what the future will bring. But, maybe it's a case where we need to have a conversation with our legislators about what are you guys doing about making sure that we're getting higher reimbursement rates, which we do anyway, but maybe we could be more vocal about it. And also, is there some, I don't know, some little quid pro quo, some little something in some of these other things, not transportation, but some of these other categories. Like, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the capital, like, why wouldn't I want to do the, I think, what did he call it, the foundation enrollment? Why wouldn't I want to do that on, because we're only talking really about the high school, or if the district has a need, as Jeff had articulated, maybe like for, like, at the maintenance, like, that's the only thing I can really think of, is like, say, maintenance would be district-wide, and then the high school would be district-wide. Why wouldn't we do foundation enrollment? I'm trying to think of what the downside of that is for debt and capital.
I guess in theory, if Hanson had a lot of charter students, it would count in the foundation enrollment, but not actually be using the.
Now, you guys, I think, have had an uptick in vocational, and we've actually had a dip in vocational
Yes.
this year. Didn't we, Lisa, didn't
Yes.
Tom tell us that recently? I don't know what the number is, but I know we had
We
a
went
largest
from
share of that.
86 to 77.
drop in
Both you guys are
vocational.
getting an uptick in, outside of South Shore vote, you're getting an
Yes.
uptick in
Norfolk,
Norfolk.
yeah.
Both of you guys are.
Yeah.
But I can get the charter numbers as well,
Yeah.
to split it out.
I mean, but
The biggest
that
question-
isn't to say that, just because that's the way it is this year, it doesn't mean next year, we're not gonna have a run on the bank with, South Shore Voc Tech. I mean, these things just, those things fluctuate, so.
I think the reason why we have to update the regional agreement is because now it's we're all the way back
Right.
to pre-ed reform. So
Yeah.
we're in 1999 with the last viable law-based regional agreement, which is now out of compliance because of the ed reform law. So in 17, 18, whenever that last one came about, had it passed, we would be in a much better place where we didn't have to. But now we have regulations that are that go against what we have written in our 1999 version.
So that's really the answer to
updating
why.
has to be updated.
No, I understand that, but in the absence of it being amended, you're still required to comply with the law, whatever that may be, whether it's included in the regional agreement or not.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I'm just, hey, listen, if we didn't have to meet all these Mondays, that would be great too, But what I'm saying is, it was.
We are expected to bring it to compliance, though.
Yeah, we are expected to have a regional agreement.
Yeah.
The issue is that, and I do think the biggest issue is going to come somewhere around transportation.
It is, that
But I
is,
will
yeah.
say that in the latest report from, maybe you wanna elaborate on that, John, about that in the year-end report for the first time this year, they asked about the specific way you determine mileage for regional districts, correct?
Made a difference.
So the end of the year report
Yeah,
for
yeah.
this year, assume that you did it per student. And we don't do that anymore, we do it by the mileage. And if you do it by student, then you come up with a different number on the end of the year report than if you do it by mileage. So that was one of the things that was like a check off, like as you're checking the report, make sure that, it's okay to be off, but it needs to be, if the only reason why you could be off is because you've changed methodologies from students to mileage. So it's on there, they know about it, what they're going to do with it, I don't know, I can speculate off camera if you want to, what they might, maybe the mileage method is going the way of the dodo bird, I don't know. So it's on there, and it's on their radar. So we may be going back to per student count anyway. But that's
Can I
just
just-
speculation.
Sure,
And I
please.
just want to add that because it was pretty much the Whitman Finance Committee and then Whitman Citizens pushing the mileage method, not for or against pushing it off to Hanson, but because we have so many non-mandated kids riding the bus. And the projection was that Whitman was going to have to pay in the fiscal '25, $500,000 for non-mandated busing. And it was supposed to be a separate article at town meeting, and FinCom said, we're not going to support this anymore. So then what does that do to the schools if Whitman says we're not going to pay for non-mandated? And it was in the era of John Tuffy where he said, well, you'd really only save $60,000, not the however many 100,000. It was a mess. So the transportation issue has to be resolved. When we went to the mileage method, I believed, and John, you can correct me, but I believe the district saved about $300,000. Which is, and there was no cut in services, the kids still got the bus service.
Well, in Hanson, it was very problematic.
That was the
So-
second year.
Right, but in Hanson, it's been better, it's been a lot better, but in Hanson, so the buses weren't full. The buses have to be 75% full,
75%.
and they
Well,
weren't,
75% of eligible students, not necessarily physical students.
correct.
Right.
But in Hanson, we have 90% of students who are eligible, just
Yep.
about.
Pretty much.
So there were kids on the bus for an hour plus in the morning and in the afternoon.
That's awful.
So
Yeah.
full day kindergarten, kid gets on the bus, right? So the busing thing, like, it's not just, like, we might benefit, Hanson has benefited financially, but as the emails, the conversations at the ball fields, at the soccer fields that I received, and then I was like, oh, sorry, because we changed this for a fine, and it saved the district $300,000, so that saved Hanson money and it saved Whitman money, but the repercussions of that, if you want a way to really anger parents, mess with transportation.
Absolutely.
So that was like the one thing. So there's like so much to unpack about it, and just making sure that whatever we do, we maintain the services. Because again, like, I don't think Whitman would ever do this, but you have so many kids who take buses who don't need to.
Correct.
And whereas in Hanson, we have so many kids who have no choice but to take a bus.
But also though, it has to be said, we also have a ton of kids whose parents are driving them every single day, but we're paying for the bus.
But that's got nothing to do with anything. You can't take that right away
No, I
in a
understand.
regional
Well,
district. In a regional
No,
district,
I
you cannot.
understand that, I do understand that.
Yeah.
And I've seen other towns, not regional, and I'm not suggesting that this happen, but say like, yeah, you're gonna have to pay for busing.
Yeah, they do it where I teach,
You
and
know.
it's really bad. The kids have to pay, what is the fee? Plus 200 plus?
250.
And the buses are empty. And then what we have after school is kids milling
Right.
about because their parents are at work,
You
they
can
don't
only-
have a ride home, they
But
can't get
in a regional
on.
school district, that can only apply to the
Under a
students
mile and a
who are
half.
under a mile.
Correct.
Again, I'm not,
No, I
I'm
know,
not
but that's all I was
proposing this.
But in
gonna say.
Hanson, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
students, it would be most of Whitman's students.
Yeah.
I mean, how many non-mandated students do we have in Hanson?
I have it right there in the piece of
So,
paper.
I just looked
I
at
gave
numbers,
them.
Hanson runs about $55,000 for non-mandated, Whitman runs about 211 to 225.
yeah, 82.
Give or take,
82%.
But that's the fact that when we talk non-mandated, or even if we talk mandated or required, the lack of some sidewalks in Hanson on main roads is problematic, because there's nowhere for the kids to go.
Absolutely.
And, and in Whitman, the issue is all those crossing 14 and 27, you're a half mile from school, but you have to go cross Route 18. So,
Without the blinking light anymore.
without the blinking
No, and
light.
even on the half days, it's out of pandemonium, and the
Right.
middle school was having issues for a while, I won't even get into it, but kids jumping out into traffic and stuff, because we don't have any sidewalks.
Right.
It's like, yeah.
So, Chair, in the interest of time, because we're gonna have to get another meeting set.
Yep.
If we look at the 5 questions tonight, number 1 question is the least question that Jeff's gonna look into for more further information. We agree on that?
Yes.
Yep.
Number 2, we're gonna wordsmith for clarity to make it easier. Number 3, this is what my notes, needs more info and needs to be worked out.
Yep.
That's what I have for number 3. Number 4 says.
Can I,
oh,
one
yeah,
second,
sure.
for our next meeting, whenever that is, could you take this year's current budget FY '24 numbers and run it with the foundation enrollment, so we can see,
Yep.
compare it?
And then number 4 is okay, because it's gotta be worked out in the above language. Basically, it's the difference between, we don't use enrollment anymore, we now say assessment formula, whatever that decision is we make. And number 5 is okay, because that's the law.
That's the law.
The commissioner starts it.
Yep.
So really, we are all about, at this point in time, wordsmithing too, but really getting to the crux of the matter.
How we assess.
Yeah,
I think that should probably be the focus of the next meeting,
I would think,
teasing down number 3.
I would think so.
We also had, have not brought it back here yet, I haven't taken it back to my board yet. What do we want to require a 2/3 vote for, was the other big piece that we kind
Oh,
of kicked
yeah.
off. So I
I
think
thought
that's,
we kind of reached consensus, I don't remember what it was, but I thought we
It's just
kind of,
money.
I thought it was just money.
Just money.
Yeah, that's kind of how I
Yeah.
remember it too.
yeah.
oh, then,
But it has to be of the whole board.
right.
The issue
Yeah,
I
that
brought
was the
up
question.
is
Yeah.
just, if you
Oh.
only have 6 people,
Yeah.
6 people is
I
a
do remember
quorum.
that, yeah.
That was where it
2/3
got
of
a
the
little
whole board,
funky,
10.
was,
Yeah, and
2/3
that's,
of 10.
and that's the
Quorum
language for the
versus
budget anyway,
whole
right?
committee.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's for the budget itself,
Of people of the
Members
entire
present.
committee.
of the entire committee, not.
Oh,
Not
not
members
members
present.
present of the
Yeah,
entire
you need
committee.
7
Correct. If
votes,
there's
7
members
affirmative votes.
present, it's 7
So
votes.
you require a super quorum for some votes.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
I suppose, yeah.
So is that still something we are discussing? Is that an item,
Is anybody uncomfortable with that is the question?
I thought we
I thought we
had
did too.
kind of put it, I don't know, maybe
I
mentally I put it
remember that the
together.
former, who was it, Mr. Hickey, was adamant that it should be on everything
That
that
was-
we moved off of that. He
Yeah.
wanted everything that requires,
Yeah.
yeah,
everything that has to do with a dollar figure. And that would be, so I think we moved back to the original, which was more of on to set the budget and to set things of that nature. And then the big question became, what is the majority? And it's
Right.
of the whole 10 as opposed to of the members present.
So is that in there, or does that need to be?
So we had two options in the draft agreement. That was kind of, we hadn't, it seemed like we were going to the call out specific areas that require 2/3 and not just 2/3 to change the assessment methodology.
But that is, but we didn't just say
But
assessment
you don't need 2/3 to
methodology.
change the assessment
Yeah,
methodology.
Well, we would in this.
Yeah, but isn't that against the law? Like, because if one town, if you're in a regional agreement, if one town, I mean, case in point, if one town is like, I want out of the agreement method, I want to go statutory, they can. That's the law.
Well,
So I guess I'm confused
you're
about
talking
how
about
that
member
works.
towns, you're talking about school committee.
Yeah, school committee
Two
members.
Yeah,
Okay,
So I think though for next
But I still
meeting,
don't-
we should have question 6 that says, discuss the draft options
Right, on page 2.
for 2/3
Yeah.
majority in the working document.
yeah, okay. Because I still don't understand
Yeah,
it.
that's
Whitman,
Page 2.
Page 2?
we were selling an agreement and Whitman was like,
Is
no,
that
I want out.
what-
Hanson was like, no, I want out. The law says that the members, any member
So-
can say, I want out.
I just want to clarify, as I understand it, the question, the decision to be made was to require a 2/3 vote on everything related to the school committee or not.
Okay.
Do I have that right?
That was originally.
But that was Hickey, Jim Hickey.
That was
That's
Jim Hickey's.
originally, but
All
then I
right,
think
so-
we moved off that.
Yeah.
I
So
think it's
can
the Mars
we-
recommendations.
Could we
were there.
list, like, I don't wanna get too in the weeds, but if we could just get like examples, because I did think, like Kathleen said, I thought it was financial.
That's what I
decisions
remember too,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Was gonna
Yeah,
be true,
or-
because we thought, we didn't wanna impede like the day-to-day
Correct.
business and just have you guys just, you know,
Right.
like,
I think they
Especially
laid
if
it
it
out
says
in the
from
Mars
present, we
recommendation.
never get anything done.
Pretty well.
This is from Mars or from us?
That's from Mars, the first go-around that we went over last meeting, then they cleaned it up for tonight from the essential questions members had.
because honestly, why would we need to do that for
We-
every
we
single
had-
thing?
so-
It feels like
Mars was one-
micromanaging.
Electing a chair would be impossible.
Yeah.
You'd have weird
Or,
things.
yeah, a lot of things would be impossible.
Yeah.
So Mars had recommendations related to this, and it was saying that they're recommending using 2/3 on these that are listed, right?
I think that's what we agreed on, but we should probably take a vote or something on it the next time.
Next meeting, we'll just have it.
Page 2, we'll review page 2.
Sounds good?
So we have 6 things, 5 things we talked about tonight, 1 thing we talked about then, so I think the agenda will really focus on wordsmithing question 2, really getting to the meat of the issue in question 3, and then question 6, really, which is the new one, which is what is on page 2, for the different types of votes for 2/3 majority.
I have a cough drop.
Oh,
Individually
thank you,
wrapped.
thank you.
And then numbers, right? You want numbers?
Yeah, that's in part of 3.
Part of
Usually
the-
Mary Beth needs
We
one.
got more
Thank
info.
you.
Even if you don't take, like, I mean, because John's got enough to do, even if you don't take numbers, like, just make something up.
Well,
Like-
you had options.
We had options.
Okay, what?
But you know what, I'm thinking of John, who's got all this other stuff he's gotta work
We had
on.
it both ways.
And then like, hey, come up with a hypothetical,
Yeah, it's
like,
just a
Yeah.
formula.
Yeah,
John's good at formulas.
but you know what I
I
mean?
do.
Like,
yeah, I got you.
like, we'll just add it to your list.
Yeah.
Sorry,
We want
John.
to meet again.
Does anybody have anything else?
Just next meeting.
All right, next meeting date.
Are we kind of doing like the second Monday, or?
Yeah, we're not
That
shooting for
might
this
not work
year's
out,
town
actually.
meeting, right?
Let me
So
see what that is.
we can go a month.
We
So that was
were
my
originally.
question too, but that was my question too, could you do this, the dates would mess up, but could you do this like at the October town meetings, like the fall town meetings? I don't know that
We
would
do a
be,
special.
We don't always have one.
Well, if there's one
We're probably
already.
gonna,
Whitman doesn't always have
we're
one.
probably gonna miss the MBTA community deadline for May, so I think we're gonna have a fall.
Okay.
We
But
could
don't
do it on-
always-
We don't always
always-
have one.
okay.
This year we
so
probably will.
So May would be, yeah,
So
We have
does
one
that
this
mean
year
like
for the
February
middle
12th
school
this year?
vote,
Yeah, I would
and then
think
lots
so,
of other
'cause
stuff
we're not
got
gonna get
tapped.
this done by the
say that one more
May
time?
town meeting.
I mean,
We had one this
1999,
October
we don't
because of the middle school.
Well,
We needed to.
I mean, for our purposes, we just have to put a
I know we do, we
placeholder into the
Right.
warrant,
I'm gonna
and
be putting
then
a
you
ball
can
on
push
it.
the
Yeah, language
envelope a
filed
little
with
bit
whoever.
on the actual language, like and since we,
Placeholder, yeah.
you know, if we'll just put a placeholder,
And
and,
then
Yeah.
pass over if we're not ready.
yeah, if we're not ready, yeah.
Yeah, but we would need Desi to sign off on the language.
Yeah, before, yeah.
So even if we finalize this in March, we're probably,
That's probably
Okay.
pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Some money,
Yeah.
that's what I got.
That's an excellent point.
Is that what we're doing?
12th.
The 12th?
Yeah.
February 12th,
February 12th.
5 o'clock.
Anybody? Anybody?
Looks good to me. 5 works,
I'll
huh?
make it work.
Yeah, I know.
Laura, I have something else I want to share with you after this committee's done.
Okay.
Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, all in favor? Everybody?
We
It's
can't
just
vote.
for you.
Yeah, just-
Yeah, just for us. That-
I'm hoping you're saying yes, I'm ready to
you
vote.
can
Thank you.
vote to adjourn.